We're getting a quick post-election look at how House Republicans plan to use their new power. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, wants to audit past U.S. military aid to Ukraine, and she wants to stop any future U.S. support.
I think the American people and the taxpayers of this country deserve to know why the Biden administration and this Congress is so interested in funding the protection of Ukraine's border and not the protection of our border.
Another clear priority is investigating the president and his family. The top Republican on the Oversight Committee tells CNN, quote, "This needs to be called the Biden investigation and not the Hunter Biden investigation."
There's no plans to subpoena Joe Biden. There are plans to subpoena Hunter Biden.
Why then would you not subpoena Joe Biden if this is all about Joe Biden?
Well, it's complicated to subpoena a president of the United States.
Our reporter's back to discuss. I want to start with Marjorie Taylor Greene in the sense that they think that's a clever line. The United States government is involved in a lot of important things, domestic policy and foreign policy. That is a propaganda gift to Vladimir Putin. But that wing of the Republican Party doesn't care.
Yeah, look, this is one of the things that they're going to have to actually sort out this year in Congress is what to do about Ukraine. I mean, this has had significant bipartisan support. You've seen that support waning on the Republican side. This is becoming an issue for the MAGA wing of the party clearly here, and these people have quite a bit of influence over the new incoming Republican leadership, assuming Kevin McCarthy can get the speakership. But that's what they're going to have to deal with now. Do they provide more aid in the lame duck session right now where Democrats are in control of both chambers, get it signed into law? It's not clear what the White House wants on that front, but there's going to be that new dynamic come January.
Is this not proof that the Republicans don't have a leadership right now, in the sense that even if you believe auditing or cutting Ukraine funding, even if you believe that's a priority, will come in a minute, even if you believe, and there are legitimate reasons to have oversight of Hunter Biden. We'll see if they overstep, but there are legitimate questions there. Even if you think those should be on your list, where's the inflation event? Where's the education event? Where's a border event is a big event first out of the box? Instead, anybody gets to do what they want because Kevin McCarthy needs all their votes. So he can't say, don't do that today, save it till next week.
Yeah. I think at some point he's going to have to decide that he needs to lead this more affirmatively than he is right now. But I understand the math is very complicated for that. To me, this is a real contrast between Senate Republicans and House Republicans. And it's partly because Senate Republicans have more experience in foreign policy, have been around longer, because it's harder to get elected to the Senate because you think about your role in the world more than you do in the House. And I think it's partly because senators only have to run every 6 years and not every 2 years. But this kind of politics, this is politics over policy. This is pure self-interest over thinking about the long-term good of the country. They're conflating two very different events
It
here.
also divides the party. I mean, not all Republicans are with, in fact, very many Republicans are not with Marjorie Taylor Greene on this Ukraine question. I mean, if you had told me 10 years ago that it was going to be Republicans who were arguing that we should send less money to fight the war against Vladimir Putin, I would have told you that you had 7 heads. I mean, this is a kind of, the world is really upside down here. And I think Ron is right, this MAGA constituency is going to press for this, but I think it creates more problems for Republicans.
And there's also the sense that, again, this town needs more oversight of just about everything. Why shouldn't Congress look at how U.S. government money is spent? Why shouldn't Congress look at ethics? Right. There are legitimate questions about Hunter Biden. The Biden Justice Department inherited an investigation from the Trump Justice Department. It's ongoing. There are legitimate questions about Hunter Biden. But if you watch that press conference yesterday, they already have their conclusions. Right. They haven't started their investigation yet, but they already know the end. That's the part. Will it be overreach? Will it be overreach? As opposed to, we think there are legitimate questions here. We've had some people come in and give us information. We're not going to talk about it publicly because that would be reckless. We're going to confirm it first and then do it. Why not?
They already have their conclusions, and by having those conclusions, they are promising the American people this big smoking gun. And as we saw with what happened under President Donald Trump, when he talked about all the scandals and controversy within the FBI and the Justice Department from all these investigations, and it all sort of went away with a whimper without any of the major scandals that the president was promising. So the Republicans could be setting themselves up for something very similar, where they promise that we're going to have this smoking gun that not only is Hunter Biden implicated, but President Biden was in on this major scandal. Yep. And if they don't have the goods, if they're not able to prove that, then it's going to look like something that the American people are being taken for a ride, and it's going to be very hard to bring people along because they're going to ask, why should I care so much about Hunter Biden when I have my own issues, my own family has issues to deal with, not the Biden family.
There are Republicans in polling and in focus grouping saying, please don't over-focus on
Yeah,
this.
this is the real power, though, of the House majority. It is not passing legislation. That's going to be very hard.
Yes.
Even messaging bills will be very hard, given the narrow margins and the differences between the folks, or 30 or so folks in swing districts, the 40 or so folks from very conservative members. They're going to have a hard time agreeing on stuff. But they have subpoena power. In this House, you have unilateral subpoena power. Unlike the Senate, you need to have bipartisan support on the committees to issue subpoenas. In the House, you can do it by a partisan way, which is what they're going to do. They're going to move forward. And just today, Jim Jordan sending out letters trying to get Alejandro Mayorkas to come testify. Other officials sending out a letter to Ron Klain as well, just moments ago, saying that they want to talk to a whole bunch of executive branch officials. They can do that because they have subpoena power. The question will be, how do those White House?
They have subpoena power, but they're also going to have, they have 218 seats now. There are 5 races still uncalled. So the highest they're going to get is 223. It's more likely they get to somewhere around 220 or 221. Again, Hakeem Jeffries in the first statement says, we want to take back the majority. The next election is a presidential election. If Republicans want to protect this majority, again, legitimate oversight is needed in this town, but is that what they want to do? Or can anybody convince them not to?
I think that the point you made earlier is the one that applies here, which is that in a world where Kevin McCarthy only has that many votes, he has to let all of these various elements of his conference, to a certain extent, do what they want to do, because otherwise they can hold a lot over his head. And that is going to potentially, if these investigations go a certain way and there's a sense of overreach, which it's often hard to avoid in these kinds of situations, that could very much endanger his majority from an electoral perspective.
Yes,
So
because the
he's like
majority is
between
built
a rock and a hard place.
on these Republicans who are in plus Biden districts.
Right.
They may not be moderate, some are kind of moderate, but some are conservative, but they got elected to districts that Biden won. And they know that they're in grave danger of losing those after 2 years if this becomes a runaway train of oversight investigations into the Biden family without policy. And
The margins are just so hard for McCarthy. I mean, he's forced us to get the votes to become speaker, and that is going to be, if he does have 222 seats like he expects, that means he can only lose 4 votes. And you already have at least 2 hard no votes on the right. Others in the far right are also threatening to vote against him. He's got to get there. There's going to be a lot of maneuvering behind the scenes to get there, but big questions for him, too.
And clearly this week, one way to get there was to not ask these people to wait. Even if you believe these legitimate priorities are the ones you want to talk about first. He clearly did not say, please don't, or if he did, they didn't listen.